Excellent. Well, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started so that we make the most of our time today. I'm super excited to be welcoming you all to our webinar, Using Automation to Maximize Instruction and Reduce Teacher Burnout. We are very excited to be here talking about such an important topic with everyone. All right, so moving on to our panel discussion today. Thank you all for your patience. We're super excited to be talking about automation and reducing teacher burnout. Here's our agenda. We will do some brief introductions, and then we will go through some questions with our panel, and then we will turn it over to audience questions. So be thinking as you're listening about what you would like to ask us at the end. Okay, so I will start with a brief introduction of myself. My name is Courtney Monk. I'm a co-founder and COO of Schoolytics. I am an economist and a data scientist by training, and I spent my career working with student and teacher data. I started out using data to try to answer research questions on how to measure good teaching. And nowadays at Schoolytics, I try to build great software for teachers and administrators and students and parents to help them use data more easily. In my free time, I'm a parent of a 5th grader and a 7th grader. So I have kids going through our public schools here in the Bay. And I am actually entering my 5th year as an elected school board member as well. So that's a thankless job, but it's an important one. And I learn a lot from being on the school board. All right, now we're going to turn it over to our speakers to introduce themselves. Randy, why don't you go first? Tell the audience a little bit about you and your background.
Will do. My name is Randy Kolset. I'm living here in sunny Southern California, Orange County area. I work at Orange Unified School District as a coordinator of educational technology. My professional path has been in the classroom for about 10 years, then ended up at the Orange County Department of Education here in Orange County for about 6 years, 7 years, and now I'm working at a district school site because I want to get back closer to the classroom, which means that I'm working professionally with the teachers, analyzing information and making sure that they understand how to make best practices of the tools that we put in front of them. And I've been doing that for about 8 years now. On a personal level, I love to scuba dive. I'm actually an instructor, so that's one of the exciting things I spend my free time doing. And then on top of that, I'm a proud husband and a father of a 14-year-old who tends to still hang out with me. So I really appreciate that of him as well when we go camping, because the other thing we like to do is camp.
Camping. I never sleep well when I camp, but thank you, Randy. I'm excited to hear more about your scuba adventures the next time we chat. All right, Sam, over to you.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me today. This is an interesting conversation, ready to get into. And I work in the Putnam County School System in Tennessee, a little town called Cookeville. We're right in between Nashville and Knoxville, Tennessee. And Future Ready Supervisor is my title, and I wear a couple of hats in that role. I work as a district supervisor with really anything edtech, and we also manage 3rd through 12th grade online school, and work as a program to also provide course options out to the students around our district. Have a wife who's a principal of a middle school, so a little bit crazy to do that, but she loves it. She's been there about 7 years as an assistant principal and a principal, and have a son who's a professional golfer who's 24 years old, and also a junior in high school who's 17 going on 35. So trying to manage those two and stay sane is a task, but really love my job and really love conversations like we're going to have today.
Great. Thank you so much, Sam. I like the golf reference. That's fun. Okay, Eric, last but not least, over to you.
I'm Eric Wang. I am the Vice President of AI at Turnitin. So I lead a global team building AI into all of Turnitin's products. Most people know Turnitin for plagiarism and academic integrity products, but we have a wide array of assessment and grading and feedback tools that are part of our portfolio as well. And there's quite a bit of AI and algorithms that sit in all of those. I live in Oakland, and I am the father of a 4-year-old, 4 going on 15. So I don't have teenagers like the rest of or older kids like the rest of this crew, but sometimes I do, or at least it feels like it. Uh, and my wife is also in the education space. She leads a nonprofit focused on improving math education for Black and Brown students, especially in early childhood learning. So education is something that's really I'm really passionate about. Um, and in my spare time, I ride bikes a lot, um, and I try to sleep because with a 4-year-old, that doesn't always happen.
Yep, I hear you, Eric. I can't say that it gets much better on the sleep front, but I think it probably should improve a little bit.
Don't scare me yet.
Alrighty.
Don't scare me yet.
We're going to jump right in and keep going. Thank you to our panelists for being here today. I appreciate you and your time. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. All right. So first, to level set, we're going to offer a definition of automation. I think of automation as simply a process of a machine, either software or hardware, doing repetitive tasks on behalf of humans. And automation can be incredibly beneficial. First and foremost, because it can relieve humans from having to do manual work, and particularly if that work has negative attributes like being irritating or boring or physically risky or time consuming. And then if the machines can actually do that work faster or potentially more safely or with fewer errors than a human could do, then it's even better. And in a school context, the people who stand to benefit most from automation, I think, in my opinion, are administrators and teachers, and their time is so valuable. Getting that time back is really critical. In fact, McKinsey came out with some research based on some survey data that suggests that 20 to 40% of current teacher hours are spent on activities that could be automated with existing technology. And that is just so much time. Examples of current processes that feel like they could be automated are many. The easiest thing that comes to mind for me are anything where you're copying and pasting multiple times. I feel like that's, step one is like, think about how we can automate that. So when I think about teachers, actions like copying grades between systems, not grading, but literally the copying part is something that sounds just so painful that we should be automating. Creating things like progress reports or anything that has kind of a Mad Libs-esque quality. Those are things that could be automated. Sending mass emails. I think about the email progression from copying and pasting text and into single emails that you might want to send to parents or students. And then using a template is kind of like a beginner step towards automation, and then using some kind of system to send those emails out to many people. But in a time when teachers are burned out and considering leaving the profession altogether, it's particularly important that we help save them time and also hopefully in the process give them some cool software superpowers to potentially even enhance what they're doing and not just save time. All right, so we're getting into the good stuff now. I'm gonna stop talking and turn it over to our panelists. I am interested in hearing from you. What are some practical and realistic ways to automate redundant teacher tasks with existing technology? Feel free to draw on examples, both things that you have tried already, and then also things that you're thinking about experimenting with or want to try in the future.
Well, I'd be willing to go first. I think exactly what you were saying is exactly what we've been experiencing, and we're trying to figure out how to address that. And I think over the last year, I've been looking for ways to make things simpler for teachers. And we always say that we bring up technology, and we say technology is going to be the thing that's going to make it simpler for you. And then what ends up happening is it creates this complexity in the classroom that the teachers aren't comfortable with. And then I ran into, I've actually known him for a while, a gentleman by the name of John Crippo. Went to one of his sessions around edge protocols, and all of a sudden it dawned on me like there's a way to shift this so that we can actually start to automate a lot of the things that are repetitive, like you were saying. So I ended up jumping into a few classrooms, one of those being a first grade class, and a lot of classrooms are having to do, repetitive tasks to get the kids to remember things. Like repetition is something that you need to do to get the kids to have it sink in and stay with them, specifically around math facts. So he started introducing all the different tools that are out there, like quizzes, Kahoot, Gimkit, all those different tools. Like people could use these to actually put them in front of the students, and then lo and behold, it grades it for you instantaneously. It gives the kids feedback instantaneously. So all these students and all this work and time that you spend going to the copier, going home and grading it all, bringing it back and hand it to the kids is now taken away and actually handed to the kids. You've empowered the child. And we've seen growth start to happen because these kids can actually start to take these tasks on their own. And we're seeing kids do, 1,000 problems in a classroom. When was the last time you handed out a worksheet and saw, all the kids want to do 1,000 problems in a classroom in a day? So we started to see those things being kind of practical, and all of a sudden teachers started to feel like they could get their weekends back. They could go, I don't have to take all these papers home and grade them. I can actually use this machine to do it. And the kids already know, the parents already know. I've already communicated all that information to those stakeholders, the people that need that information.
Great, great. Those automated assessment tools, very, very handy. And practice. I hear a lot about practice.
And it's usually low stakes as well. Sorry.
That's okay. I'll jump in, kind of continue that conversation. I think in the teacher classroom, Randy, a lot of the hesitation, especially pre-COVID, was the fear of, maybe the student in the classroom knowing a little bit more about the technology usage than actually some of our teachers do. So that was kind of a factor I think teachers had to deal with. But, going into COVID, I think a lot of folks had to, dip their toe in the water that probably never really wanted to before, and got some actual experience with how it could improve their classroom as a teacher. And Courtney, you're exactly right. It's minimal tasks. Time is always the problem for everybody. So, as teachers continue to leave the field, the ways that we can show them how to save time is valuable for them. And one thing that really started us down that road was Google for Education. We're a Google district, and you've seen them kind of the direction of Google to give educators everything they need, to work right inside their Gmail front. So having all those tools in one place that will get you to the Google Docs, or can create a space for teachers to work with their team, to chat back and forth, just to make it easier for them to create more opportunities to save time in order to give them time back in the classroom that they can work with students and create relationships with them. And, it's not a plug, but Schoolytics is something we're piloting right now. And great options for teachers on a lot of the things that we have mentioned already. Attendance, parent-student communication is huge. That's something that takes a lot of time for teachers in the classroom, but is very, very important, because you don't want to get to a point where you have a parent that's uninformed, and that leads to a problem because they didn't know how their son or daughter was doing until a time where it was almost too late. And so the communication, if we can save teachers time communicating with parents, and not only parents, but fellow teachers within the same school. Sometimes teachers are so busy they don't have time during the day to collaborate with fellow teachers unless time is created by the school or the staff, or planning periods, or something like that. And so I think it's important to keep practical, not to be threatening with too much too quickly, because teachers are going to have time to process all of this, learn how to use it logically to save time in their classroom with their students, before it's going to be very effective for them.
I think one of the things that we've seen at Turnitin, and I think my point of view here is, amongst these really great educators, is really from a technologist point of view. We have seen a lot of success and a lot of customers that are very happy with a product called Gradescope. And what Gradescope does is it actually takes advantage of an effect that Courtney mentioned. it uses computer vision to group handwritten assignments or handwritten answers to a question together. So if you imagine a math question or a chemistry question, you might have 40 students, but really you're only going to have 5 or 6 different answers. And what we found is teachers were grading 40 questions and they were writing, -2 for missing the exponent 8 times in a row. And it's not hard, but it's repetitive. And it takes up a lot of time and it takes up a lot of energy. And handwriting, again, you have to read the handwriting, which is cognitively kind of hard. So what we did was we came in and we said, how do we think a little bit outside the box? And so we used computer vision to be able to read the handwriting of the student as the assignments are submitted. They're just smartphone photographs, right? Smartphone scans of the assignment, and we group the answers together. So then a teacher can come in and we say, hey, these 8 submissions, these 8 answers, they're all the same thing. You can, in one glance, take a look and you assign the same grade to all of them. So that's plugging what we do a little bit, partially because it's the world I know. But I think there's a lot of opportunities to start using lower level AI, and recognizing that it's not the big Orwellian, Terminator, Skynet kind of world, and recognizing that it actually performs a lot of these. AI has gotten really good at performing a lot of these lower level tasks, and we're starting to see a lot more of these apps come forward to start to truly automate, right? Not just in terms of process automation, but really start to take away some of that lower level cognitive thought that takes up energy, takes up time, and that's been a really powerful shift for teachers in terms of products that we've seen.
Yeah, I guess to piggyback on that, the teacher that I was working with, and we've got a few others that are going through this as well. They found like those low level things that they're doing with the kids, the low cognitive. Now they have the opportunities to start expand what they can ask the kids to do. So they're starting to do word problems with first graders, where the kids are actually solving it, designing it, solving it, and then explaining it. And those kinds of things, teachers have a very difficult time getting to because they're spending so much time on those low level skills. So if we can start to leverage the machines to kind of maybe do these repetitive tasks for us, pull them together. And if writing, right, if you can grade all my writing papers, I'm in.
Well, I mean, we'll get to that in a little bit. Obviously, if you follow the news and you've been reading about GPT-3 and OpenAI and ChatGPT, a lot of the fear has been around these technologies eroding academic integrity, doing work for students. And I think we're not speaking enough about the impact that these technologies potentially could have in actually improving feedback, improving our ability to give feedback more consistently, more impactfully, and at much greater scales than we ever could imagine before these technologies existed.
Along with that, that kind of makes me think about personalization within the classroom. So if the teachers know a little bit more uh, data on the students and can group them a little bit better than we have in the past, that would give them the awareness of, who needs that teacher time in the classroom the most, and for the students maybe who don't need as much teacher time and can be more self-directed, you can give them assignments using the technology that we talked about, that they can use to learn from, work with other kids, create must-do, may-do playlists that kind of engages students a little bit more. So this all flows. I'm happy to hear this conversation because it all flows together, especially what you were talking about with the teachers that you're working with in the classroom, Randy. It presents an option, to use that data driven classroom expectation, and target that instruction individually to students based on what their needs are. And then, when you can do that and use that to create some student reflection and opportunity for ownership within the classroom, all of a sudden you see the students just light up. And one interesting thing that we've been doing this for about 6 years now in our district, and every year we ask the question, we call it personalized learning. And every year we ask the question, what's your favorite thing about personalized learning? And it's a very short survey, and the students, every year that we push that out for the last 6 years, the number one area of feedback is what they like the most is the more time they get to spend with their teacher. And, it's not use of Chromebooks, it's not technology, it's not anything that you might think it would be in the beginning, but it's about, hey, I get more time with my teacher, and I like that.
100%.
Big
I
part of
think this time saving piece is just so important. Can't stress enough. I think what's also interesting to consider about time saving is there's this idea of like you have this much time and then you'll get extra hours, but I think there's sort of this opposite effect too, where you do things with an automation tool that you just wouldn't do otherwise. So if you think about this, teacher to student communication, for example, if I'm a teacher and I'm teaching middle school and I have 100 students, because I teach, say, 4 periods, and I want to send each of them a fairly personalized note on how they're doing on their schoolwork or just in the classroom. Like, even if I spent 2 minutes on every email, that's 200 minutes. And so it's just something that you say, oh, I can't do that because it takes too long. And you would never consider it. Whereas I think if you can have a tool that helps you to do that, then, at the click of a button, say, then you'll say, well, yeah, sure, I'll send those notes out. Like, that's no problem. And so there's an additive component as well as a deductive one, if those adjectives make sense, in terms of saving time and giving you opportunities to do that. At Schoolytics, we think a lot about those teacher-student communications, and we've seen, kind of building off what you were saying, Sam, that we help teachers send kids positive messages that just say, hey, in the last week, you've accomplished 80% assignment completion on your work. Good job. I'm really proud of you. Keep it up. And teachers rave about this option because it really is that like personal touch. I guess fundamentally it's written by a robot, but teachers just say students right back. They say thank you, that it's opened up avenues of conversation and building student-teacher relationships, which I personally had way underestimated when we thought about designing that feature. So I think the connection, like a human connection, can actually be enhanced by a machine, which is like a really weird concept, but
Exactly.
But I've seen it play out for our teachers.
vice versa. And I think it's back to feedback. As soon as a student knows, often in education, they're told like they've missed the mark. You missed the mark, you missed the mark, you missed the mark. And then eventually you get the A, and then congratulations, you got an A. But if you go in between, like, you're at 80%, that's fantastic. It's better than 70%. Then the kids are like, oh my gosh. And we've done that. I think we've even done that with like those basic scores. When we first kick it off, we say, okay, you guys got 50% on this basic mathematics, quiz that we've given you online. Let's see if we can't get 55%. 50% is not great, but 55% is better than 50. And then you just keep going, and the kids are like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And they're not bought into or see this, like, it's not everything's trying to destroy their opportunity. They're actually seeing, oh, I'm growing, I'm actually building, I'm actually moving someplace. And it opens up those doors where they can see a progression. And the machine is the one telling them that. The teacher's not telling them it. The machine is saying, you did better, you did better, you did better, to move on. Video games. Oh my gosh, that's exactly what a video game does constantly.
Gamification is powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, any other thoughts before we move on to the next one? I just want to be cognizant of our time. All right, let's keep going. So our next question is about potential pitfalls. We've covered some great benefits. We're bought into this idea that automation can save time, can help us do more with less. But what are potentially some drawbacks or things that you should be watching out for?
So from our end, one thing that a lesson that we've learned over the years in building AI-powered edtech products is agency. And I saw that pop up a few times in the chat as well. A lot of times, I think edtech in the past, I think we're learning as an industry, but in the past, it's been this belief that technology must be better. technology must be better. So once we bring it in, this will make your life better. And those early days as an industry, I think we sort of forgot that, ultimately it's the human experience. That education is a social enterprise, not a technology enterprise. It's not a spreadsheet. It's not homework. It's moments of interaction and moments of clarity between two human beings, and that is fundamentally built on trust and agency. And so I think as we enter a world where AI is going to exponentially increase its presence and impact on our society and on our lives, I think it's really important to look at tools that are intended to automate and ask, is the human in charge, or are they usurping agency from the human? And if it's the latter, we really need to be thinking carefully about what role they play in our classrooms and in our schools.
Eric, I think for that, I can go back to 2008. That was really the first time we were experimenting with holistic computer labs, and kind of our first dip into that was credit recovery. If you all remember, the huge use of technology in a classroom really started with credit recovery because kids had already sat through a class for a certain period of time and they weren't successful. But, we didn't want them to go back into the same class with the same teacher and have to sit through the class again, because a lot of times they're not successful a second time. So we started seeing some programs come out that would allow the students to, really be tested as they came in, kind of identify their deficiencies and then work their way through it. And already having that seat time, if you will. And so that was kind of the beginning point for the use of technology in the classroom. And then we started wondering, okay, this is working really good with kids who've been through the curriculum one time with a teacher. Can we use it for credit advancement? By that time, Florida Virtual School was already going and doing a good job with what they do. And, the answer was yes. But back to your point, Eric, the teacher is always at the center of that instruction. And when you rely on a computer or a program to teach a kid with no interaction with a teacher, you can see it's not very successful at all. And there are probably kids that could learn that way and be okay, but I can't imagine wanting to go through a class situation without having that interaction with a good teacher. And so you're right, coming back and identifying that and making sure, nothing that we're saying today is threatening the role of a teacher in the classroom. It's actually trying to help it, so these teachers will want to stay in this field a long time. And what automation can we use to help them be a better teacher? Even if they're top of a level 5 teacher in Tennessee is the best, the best teacher, the best evaluation you can get. But a lot of those teachers that now are experimenting with automation, if you will, or technology in their classroom have found out they could be much better teachers, even though they're very good to begin with.
Yeah, I think great Oh, I'm sorry, Randy.
No, go right ahead. Automation.
I was just going to finish that thought with you, Sam, real quick. That I think great automation actually leads to more interaction, right? And so it's not the opposite. Automation isn't meant to replace that interaction.
Yeah, and I think that's the role of the teacher should, through that process, actually go back to what we all got into teaching for in the first place, which was to sit down with kids, find like what they're interested in, what they want to do. Now, how can I help you get there? This machine is going to give you all those foundational pieces. They're going to tell me what your where your discrepancies might be, and then we'll figure out a plan to make that work. That's what most teachers get into teaching for, and then what they end up doing is grading papers, spending time building new worksheets, da 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 da. So how do we get rid of like those mundane things, give that to a machine, and then let the teacher actually teach and pull them in a direction? And I think same like what you were talking about, Mr. Brooks, Sam, was that we did the same. We still do the same thing with credit recovery with our tool. We set the kids in, and then we have an automated summer school where you can sit down and go through these online classes, and the kids are still not being any more successful than when they sat through the class with the teacher, because there's really no connection to like, why am I learning this? What's the purpose? What's the reason to make it through? So we can see that the teacher's role is still very, very valid in that process. If the teacher does not connect with that student, they become lost in this whirlwind of of walking through school, and they're not sure like why they're doing this. And so the teacher's role becomes very important in that process. And I believe that the role will be back to like what what am I trying to say? What the real reason is that we got into teaching for.
I think
I
there's
think
another. Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
I was going to
No,
say
no, please.
another pitfall was like data overload. You can also, now that we've got all this data coming in, teachers now all of a sudden have all this information and they're not going to know what to do with it. So how do we as leadership, how do we as designers, how do we start to narrow that down so a teacher can take that information, assimilate it, and then even hand it back to the student? I think the same thing with students. Like we want to empower the students. So once the students start to pick up data and they start to see it, how do they start to translate that to make it something that's operational, that they can actually start to move and pick a path, and then ask the people that they need help with. So they can say, hey, I'm struggling in this area. I see it's a discrepancy in my learning. Can you help me? Like, what's my next step to make this happen? That would be very, very powerful. And then imagine a student who graduates from high school who has those skills. They're going to be able to do almost anything.
I think that to that point, Randy, when you talk about especially students accessing this data, it makes me think about a less talked about aspect of technology and automation and tech, which is equity and access. So a lot of these tools, they're digitally based. Many of them require high-speed internet or a data plan on a smartphone. And while that is fairly ubiquitous these days, uh, ensuring that these tools aren't simply a sort of rich get richer, schools that can afford these kind of tools accelerating forward while districts that may not have budgets as free as some other districts aren't able to move as quickly. I think that's really important. I also think as automation and AI starts to push more into our lives, recognizing like this sentence here of automation, but automation to whose standards, automation by whose sort of conditions, right? And recognizing that a lot of these or some of these systems, the potential for bias, the potential for edge cases where some folks get left behind and others are move forward or accelerated, that does exist. That imperfection doesn't mean we shouldn't use them, but I think we need to go into this future world of increased automation with our eyes open and really focusing on making sure that every single student gets as much of the opportunities in our more automated, more AI driven world in the future.
Yeah, I think, Eric, data becomes even more important there, right? So in order to evaluate and hold ourselves accountable to equity and access, making sure that all kids have access to devices, et cetera, you actually need to be measuring and tracking who has that access and who doesn't. Because otherwise it remains sort of a theoretical, or maybe it's happening, but you don't know what to do about it, or you can't actually take an action step because you're like, well, I'm sure some kids don't have a device that works, but I don't know which ones. And so that's where the data becomes more and more important. Sort of access notwithstanding, Randy, when you talk about getting teachers back to that, I don't know, sort of idealistic utopian version of teaching.
Come on, we can do it. We can do it.
Yes, I love it. I do think I'll put a plug in here for learning management systems. I know that there was a big ramp up during the pandemic, but I actually think that a learning management system is like a perfect example of automation that's already happening in classrooms around the world, where, before there was this passing back of papers and tracking of assignments and writing down things in a paper grade book, if you will, and now those things are digitized. And so there is some fluidity, and I think a lot gained through learning management systems. There are things maybe that we've lost too, which we can think about how do you replace that.
Can I jump on that one?
Yeah, go for it.
So it's the one that actually kind of, I must have been 7 years ago when Google Docs popped up and teachers saw that, you can see the kids typing at the same time. This is awesome. This is magnificent. Now, all of a sudden you have a learning management system where you toss the Google Doc in there, and you as a teacher now can walk around digitally, walk around every paper and see how the kids are doing and typing. Then on top of that, they actually added in the fact that it tracks every single edit inside the document. Teachers are like, oh, now I can catch them and see if they're cheating. I'm like, yes, but you can also see their thinking process and why they shifted their thoughts right in the middle of that document as you track through and see how they're typing, and then to delete a whole paragraph, add a whole paragraph, or just change the whole document altogether. Now you can start to see how this child is acquiring or working through their problem solving. And with that, there's a data, I guess, analysis that's going on that people don't, that a teacher's doing, that maybe a computer could also do as well, but at some point with AI. But right now, a teacher can see that information. They're gathering all this data on an individual that they may not have ever been able to do, because all you get is the final paper. You get the final paper and you say, yeah, you did it or you didn't do it. Have a nice day. Now you can see the whole entire process and help the child out. And you don't have to do it for every kid. You could do it just with the ones you know that are struggling as well from your data. Sorry, I got excited.
I love it. All right, we're going to keep moving on to our final big question of the day, and then we'll hopefully have some time for audience questions. So this is the one maybe that everyone's been waiting for, which is like, what are you most excited about? How do you think this automation is going to change education in the near future? What's on the horizon?
Are we going to hand it over to the technologist? To the
Eric, that's your cue.
I think, thank you. I'm really looking forward to what Randy and Sam have to say, because in a lot of ways, they're the ones that are really, on the ground, right? The educators are the ones talking to the kids. So I'm really excited for their answer. But I think from our end, my answer is different than it was 2 years ago. My answer is different than it was, I would say, a month ago. But the release of the latest generation of these large language models, ChatGPT, GPT-3, those are just the name brand famous ones, but there's about a dozen of these out there. I think it's going to revolutionize. I was telling someone in the company, I think it's going to revolutionize literally every facet of our lives. I think people are just starting to grasp, and maybe not even really grasping, the power of these machines, the ability for them to really take on so many tasks, not just for teachers. I mean, in our lives, I think there's their ability to understand, to reason, to create novel text. We think a lot about students using it to create essays, and is that academic integrity? Is that plagiarism? But I think the ability, we talked about feedback. These machines can make something that was science fiction a year ago, and actually a very easy thing to develop, which is, imagine a situation where you have 40 essays to grade, and these are free-form, multi-page essays, and you ask the computer, hey, I need to know, show me all the essays where they talked about this theme and they use this evidence. And you literally ask it in natural language, and the machine comes back and it says, these are the essays. And a situation where it's right almost all the time, right? It's presenting evidence, it's understanding the writing of the students, regardless of style, and being able to allow you to suddenly grade essays at a scale that was unimaginable. And if you then take a step back and you think about assessment and what authentic assessment is, and authentic assessment is important to all of us as education professionals, the short answer is better than multiple choice. I think many of us, I think we generally would agree with that, but it's harder to grade. It doesn't scale. Suddenly short answer scales, and it scales very, very easily. So you can actually create better assessment, richer assessment. I think we're going to be heading in that direction. I also think that, and that's my last point. I'd love to hear what everyone else has to say. I think visibility and an honest dialogue around what these new technologies mean in our society and education is going to be important. The initial sort of reaction, and the expected reaction is, oh, this is like the calculator, we have to kind of keep it out of classrooms. But I think, for us, our view is we're building tools, and they're actually coming. They will be out before term papers are due for this school year, to help teachers understand whether these AI writing tools have been used. And so those features are actually launching on Turnitin as we speak, actually. So that's really exciting. And we think the reason we're focusing on that is not because we're taking a stance that AI writing is good or bad. It's that we believe visibility and transparency is the foundation to having that necessary set of conversations between teachers, students, administrators. What is this technology? How is it being used? What are right places to use it? And what are places where we maybe want to keep it out because the formative learning that needs to happen in absence of these technologies. Um, so I think that's really exciting, and I think it's the next 5 years are going to be an enormous amount of change in our world and in our society, um, and education is really at the forefront of it because the people that are in your classrooms right now, they're the future presidents, they're the future leaders, they're the future doctors and people that are going to solve all these problems that we face. So it's really important that we get it right.
I think for the next 5 years, I agree with everything that you're saying, and I specifically believe that there's going to be a lot of conversations that we're all, as administration, as teachers, as leaders in communities, are going to have to wrestle with. I remember when I did a thesis for my degree way back when we talked about grading papers. I thought that would be the best thing in the world. And there was already computers back in the '60s that were grading papers, and human beings just didn't trust the machine. They knew that they worked, didn't trust the machine, so that never got adopted. So teachers continued to grade those papers. Then I even got involved with a company, and I was sending the papers of my fourth grade kids to see if they could actually upgrade that as well. So it's been there, but most of the time, what stops it is the conversation. It's like we're not going to allow this to happen because for whatever reason. So we've got to have that conversation because as soon as the kid walks out the door, it already exists. It's already there. So how are they going to apply this? How are they going to make it work? How are we going to start to allow the teachers to maybe engage the students in those higher order thinking skills so that they can actually critically think about, like, is this appropriate, is this the right time to use it, what is the appropriate way to make this work? I think those are the things that we're all going to have to wrestle with. I read an article about chat gpt, and all the teachers are very nervous over the regards that, like, well, now they're going to be able to write a paper. I don't know if it's authentic, I don't know if it's real. And the person was saying, maybe take Chat GPT, put it in front of your class, have the computer write the paper, and then have the kids analyze the paper. How accurate is it? How much of the information is true? How much of it is actually written correctly? Have all those things. So then you have examples. You have a way for the students to start to critically think, and you have them understanding what the structure looks like and whether or not this artificial intelligence is actually truly completely accurate. Don't completely trust the technology because often that data and that information being pulled may not be accurate. It could have flaws and those kinds of things. So I think in the next 5 years, there's going to be a lot of conversations in addition to the fact that things are just going to accelerate. I mean, we started up a computer science school, and one of the things that we tried to show teacher or parents was that this is already hit. These things exist. So we talk about Amazon's grocery store that they have in place, Amazon Go, I think it's called, and then also self-driving trucks, and how many jobs this affects when you have those kinds of technologies put in place. Parents get terrified, right? Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? They're going to be out of work. I'm like, well, maybe not. Maybe the work is starting to shift. And there's a grocery store here that I went and said, oh, well, if I'm going to be a part of this, I got to go down and go shopping, right? I got to go figure out if this is the place to what happens there. And you can really see the roles of the people in the store shift and change. Like, they're now actually walking up to you and say, hey, what are you looking for? Or, these are probably the better ones than those, as you're picking things up. And then the shopping cart's telling you where to find the sales and which, things are actually available at this moment in time. So it's like, it's going to start to shift on how we actually interact as human beings and the conversations that we're going to have to make this different. I know that's not the exciting stuff. That's kind of the boring stuff, but that's really, I think, what's going to happen in the next 5 years.
That was a good setup for me, Randy. Thank you. I want to go big picture with this one. I thought about this one a lot. In the next 5 years, I think career and technical education is going to have a huge reboot. Some states are already doing that now, but you take a look at the esports industry and how it's growing and how fast it's growing. And I think most people out there think esports is just a game and it's something that kids do, to buy their time. But, there's scholarships with esports. There's some implications to coding. You can create a coding class based off of esports. And it really gains the students' interest who are interested in that area. And something that really surprised me, I went to Las Vegas to a conference there, and the drone industry. A kid can graduate high school and get a minimal certificate in high school, and be certified to operate drones. And drones are crop dusting now. They're being used for roofing. So the roofers don't even have to climb on the roofs anymore. They just put their drone up there and take the pictures that they need and get paid for it. And so it's amazing at what is going on. And like you said, Randy, it's not going to be a loss of jobs. The jobs may be a little bit different. But I think the main fact, and I've said this for years, and now it's been 5 years, but I used to say 65% of the jobs that are going to exist in 5 years are not even a job right now. And that's what these students that are graduating and then going to college or going to workforce are walking into. So if we're not using automation and technology and teaching them, how to use it in the classroom, then are we serving them in the way that we need to get them prepared to walk in those opportunities? And so that I was saying that 5 years ago, and now it's 5 years, and we're starting to see this stuff, take place, and that transition in the workforce, I think, is going to drive that career and technical. Because I think all of us, I don't know how old you guys are, but I've been around a little while. I think when I went to school, it was like, okay, Sam, you need to go to a 4-year college and get a degree in order to have a good paying job and have a good life for your family. And I'd say that pretty much used to be true, but I can't say that's true anymore. And when kids can walk out of high school with a certification and get into welding and make $65,000 right out the door, and a lot of other opportunities right down that same line, they don't necessarily have to go to a 4-year school anymore. And I think we're getting to the end result. If they go from high school to work and they go into a good workplace and they stay on job there for a while, chances are that business is going to want to educate them further. So they may send them to a 2-year school. And if they do well there and they move up in the workplace, they're probably going to want to send them to a 4-year school. And so they're ending up with a degree, the same degree someone would that went straight from high school into college. They're getting there. It's just a little bit different in the way that they're getting there. But, the career and technical, opportunities that are out there right now is a huge need in our country. And I think that's going to be a driving force in the next 5 years. I made some bullets and I want to throw these out there for the next two. So here, Eric and Randy, I want to hear your thoughts on this. I said politics and education will continue to grow. AI technology will continue to gain traction in education. Eric, you've already talked about that. There will be a lot more focus from the top down on return on investment in districts across the land. And then I think a huge one is disruptive innovations will play a key role because our economy's gotten a little tighter. And a lot of times those disruptive innovations will start out on a smaller scale and gain traction and then all of a sudden explode as something that everybody wants. So thoughts on that?
Wow.
I agree with you, Sam. I think that we're getting to a point where AI and automation, I think in the next 5 years, I think sooner, is going to roughly be equal to people in most labor tasks. And what that leaves then, I think as educators, what that does is that actually puts a extra importance on teaching our students critical thinking, empathy, problem solving, creativity. These are things that AI doesn't do because they're kind of functions of the human experience. And I think future employers are going to value that. I hope it is as an optimist. I have a sincere hope that our future world is one where we don't spend so much time focused on humans doing labor, right? And spend more time on 8 billion people employing brilliant, creative minds to solve these huge problems, these huge challenges that we face, whether it's societally or whether it's scientifically, on our planet. So I'm hopeful that we get there. But the road between here and there means, there was a chat just about trade people a few bullets ago, and between now and there is a huge amount of disruption. And I think it's an unavoidable economic disruption. So I think an additional question is, as education professionals, what are we going to do to help bridge? There's going to be a generation, half a generation of kids that are going to live across this massive societal transformation. And we have a responsibility to them while, I think we're bridging across to that future.
I would agree. Same thing, same pieces. There's so much that's going on out there. I don't know what the answers are going to be. So it's going to be the disruptions that hit. Students are going to have to learn how to learn, unlearn, and relearn constantly. We just came from a STEM ecosystem meeting here in Southern California, and one of the things that they mentioned is kind of a side note. I think it was Boeing. They said they had talked to Boeing, and they're getting students that are coming out of college, and Boeing is saying, like, we have to teach these kids how to unlearn what they've learned in college and then reteach them what we need them to know. And I think that really, it's not that their knowledge about engineering is wrong. It's about how do you solve a problem, which is the issue. Like, they're always looking for the answer. Well, we've got all kinds of machines that do that now. I think we talked about this before. Like the calculators, did calculators disrupt numeracy? Is numeracy still important? Do we still need to teach it? Yes. Did calculators shut that all down? No, but it's still used across all these different industries to make it work. And I think the same thing about writing. We talked about Socrates, right? Socrates said that if we write everything down, we're going to eventually not remember anything. And eventually now we write everything down. Everything's documented across the world, and especially with the internet, it's documented everywhere. So these things, these discussions on how it's going to help students and how we're going to support the kids and how we're eventually going to make sure that they understand how to engage in the world that they exist in, and realizing that the world, like today, when they arrive as a freshman in high school, by the time they graduate from high school, the jobs that they're looking for are going to be probably very different, and they have to figure out how to ebb and flow in that process. And education, I think the big thing in education is we've got a system, right? This system works. Here's how it works. Don't move it, because if we move it, then we don't know how to rock that. It was Disrupting Education from Craig Christensen. He ended up saying that it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. It hit, especially when the pandemic hit. It hit, and it hit hard, and everybody was just, oh my gosh, what are we going to do next? And now everybody's kind of fighting for their foothold and figuring out what we're going to be able to do to support these kids as they move forward. Esports is a huge one as well. There is so many jobs that are attached to that, and it's got viewership that is well beyond anything anybody in the normal sports industry ever thought it could be. And people are starting to wrestle well, what do we do with this? How do we tap into it? How do we get to be a part of that as well?
Yeah,
and it's opening venues for kids too, or people, so they can get connected, socially, networking, all those kinds of things. Sorry, Courtney.
Right. Yeah, no, I love the call out to esports and CTE from Sam. I think those are big areas of change, exciting for students. I think in the near term, I'm particularly optimistic around personalization and what that means for differentiation and what we're able to do as teachers and educators. I know personalization has been a buzzword for so long, and it's been very disappointing. But it's ultimately a data question and a time question. It's time intensive to personalize things, and it's data intensive to personalize systems. And so I think we're getting closer and closer to that. An example, which kind of relates to what Eric was talking about, was, machines finding patterns and mistakes. So if students are writing, for example, computer science programs, you can do evaluations of that and find where they're getting stuck and where they're all making mistakes. And you can group students together and give them instruction and help based on those groupings and what you observe. And something that would be very hard for a human to deduce based off of, lines and lines of code and things like that, but that machines can do fairly well. So the teaching part is not something the computer can do, but I think the identifying of who's doing what and who kind of goes together is interesting. All right, we are going to move on. We've got about 4 minutes, so we're going to do a couple minutes of Q&A. Let me bring up some questions from the audience and see if we've got one that looks like it. I like this first one. from Christopher. We've implemented technology that we thought would automate redundant tasks, but ended up creating more work for teachers. Have you encountered something similar, and how did you address it? I think, Randy, I remember you talking a little bit about this, so maybe you have some ideas.
You kind of abandon it. That's what if you've got something that's creating more work than what needs to be done, there's no reason to hang on to it. It's like one of those things, like you've invested all this time and energy and this money. I can't let go. I need to hang on to it. But if it really is just bloating and bloating and bloating and bloating, what are you solving? Is it really helping the students? So you have to have, I think, conversations with whoever you're investing in. In our industry, it's very difficult because there's a lot of moving parts, especially politically. Like, well, this person invested in it. This is their baby. This is what's going to get them to move to the next level. So how do we kind of navigate to say this is not working? And I think if you focus in on, which is what we usually do, you focus in on, well, what's the impact it's having on the kids? What's the performance? Are the kids actually increasing? Do we see performances going forward? Is it helping the teachers as well? And so we've as a department started to focus in on saying, does it save teachers time? Is it providing like timely feedback to the students and the teachers? And is it increasing their learning? If it can do those three things, then we should probably invest time and energy into that, be it a PD, be it a software, be it a hardware, to make it work. If it doesn't do those three things, then why are we doing this? There better be a very good reason to expend all this money on those areas as well. It's not easy just to abandon it, but there's a lot, like a process to go through, and you have to come up with some sort of value system to say, this is what we run that thing through. And if it doesn't fall into that value system, then why do we hang on to this? Why does it keep moving?
Cool. Here's an interesting question. Does the automation you're talking about mean students using automation or teachers? And I think that's actually interesting. It kind of calls on the irony of us saying teachers should use automation to save time, but we don't want students using ChatGPT, a form of writing automation, to save their own time. But yeah, what do you guys see on the student side in terms of automation?
I talked last time. That was that article. I'll jump in 2 seconds. That last article that I wrote, the gentleman was talking about how, every teacher needs to find a way to use it towards the parents. Towards the students. And at the very end of it, oh, by the way, it'll write you a lesson plan. And he gave a link where you could actually click on it and it would write out an entire lesson plan for a teacher in ChatGPT. So all of a sudden, like, now you've made this connection that it's going to help more than just kids cheat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the
Oh, go ahead, Sam.
automate.
Yep.
I think the automation we were talking about was more oriented to teacher time, and then that led into some discussion around technology in general. But yeah, I think for what we're talking about here today, just how can we improve on the time that teachers need to do what they do and make them feel better about it. And I think training, of course, is always very important. And I think it's tough when districts just make a decision and they don't involve the opinion or thought process of the teachers that are in the classroom. So I think that's going to be very important. And then, anything that you spend money on or you're going to make an integration within your district with, that needs to be conversation within the community, just so everybody's involved in the discussion and knows going in. So for me, it's we're in a dire need right now for teachers. I was talking to someone in Kansas the other day, and about 25% of their teaching staff is not certified right now, and so that's tough. So something's going to have to be done to make it a more attractive opportunity for students that are coming out of college. Everybody's really wraps their mind around higher pay and all of that, but if you survey teachers, pay is not number one, on what they would like to have in their field. So it's important, there's no doubt. But I think they just want to be respected. They want students in the classroom to respect them. They want students in the classroom to be engaged and understand that they're trying to help them with their future. And I think that's what we need to get back to.
Well, that's a good note to end on. So we are at time. We're going to wrap it up here. Definitely check out Schoolytics.com. I want to thank you all for attending, audience members and panelists. Thank you, Eric, Randy, and Sam. Y'all were very interesting and engaging. Check out Schoolytics.com if you're a teacher or administrator to learn more. And if you don't mind, try the survey to give feedback on the panel to EdWeb, tinyurl.com/edwebinareval. And that, my friends, is it. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.